The Montgomery estate sat on 12 acres of what had once been the most beautiful property in Ashwood Hills. Now, the gardens grew wild, the fountains stood dry and cracked, and the windows of the grand manor remained shuttered even at midday. Inside the mansion, Julian Montgomery moved through rooms like a ghost haunting his own life. At 42 years old, Julian had everything money could buy and nothing that mattered. His fortune, built through decades of strategic investments and business acquisitions, meant nothing without Catherine. She had been gone for 14 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days. Not that he was counting, except he was. Every single hour of every single day. The staff had learned to stay invisible. His housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, had been with the family for 20 years. But even she tiptoed around the master of the house. 3 chefs had quit in the past year. Julian either ignored their cooking entirely or threw fits about dishes that reminded him too much of Catherine's favorites. The house had become a mausoleum, Julian its most devoted mourner, a knock that refused to be ignored on a gray Tuesday morning. Mrs. Patterson announced another applicant for the chef position. Julian barely looked up from the financial reports scattered across his desk. "Tell them to leave like all the others," he said flatly. "Sir, this one is different. She says she will not leave until you speak with her." Something in Mrs. Patterson's tone made Julian glance up. His housekeeper looked almost hopeful, and that irritated him more than anything else could have. "Fine, send her in. I will make this quick." When Olivia Carter walked into his study, Julian's first thought was that she looked nothing like a professional chef. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with dark curly hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes were modest but clean, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that immediately set his teeth on edge. She did not look intimidated by his reputation or his scowl. "Mr. Montgomery, thank you for seeing me," she began. "I did not agree to see you. My housekeeper forced this meeting. You have 2 minutes to leave on your own before I have you escorted out." Olivia's expression did not change. She simply pulled a worn folder from her bag and placed it on his desk. "I have worked in professional kitchens for 8 years. I trained under Chef Bernard at the Riverside Inn. I can cook anything you want or need. I do not gossip. I do not pry. And I do not quit when things get difficult." "Everyone quits eventually," Julian said bitterly. "Everyone leaves. Your wife did not leave you, Mr. Montgomery. She died. There is a difference." The words hit him like a physical blow. Julian stood up so fast, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. His hands shook with rage. "How dare you come into my home and speak about my wife? You know nothing about her or what happened." "You are right. I know nothing about your wife," Olivia said calmly, not backing down an inch. "But I know about loss. I know what it means to wake up every day and have to choose to keep living. And I know that you are starving yourself, not just of food, but of everything that makes life worth living." Julian wanted to throw her out. He wanted to rage and scream until she ran away like everyone else. But something in her eyes stopped him. She was not offering pity. She was offering understanding, and that was somehow worse. "Why would you want to work here?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You have heard the stories? You know what people say about me?" "I need the job," Olivia answered honestly. "And you need someone who will not treat you like broken glass. You need someone who will cook you real food and remind you that being alive means more than just breathing." The silence stretched between them. Julian could hear the old clock on the mantel ticking, counting down seconds of a life he no longer wanted to live. "1 week," he finally said. "You have 1 week to prove you can handle this position. But do not expect me to be grateful or kind. I have nothing left to give anyone. I am not asking for gratitude or kindness, Mr. Montgomery. I am asking for a chance." The first Olivia began work that same afternoon. She studied the massive kitchen with its professional appliances, most of which had barely been used in over a year. Mrs. Patterson gave her a list of Julian's usual requests. Simple things he would pick at and mostly leave untouched. "He barely eats," the housekeeper said sadly. "Some days he forgets meals entirely." Olivia nodded, taking in the information. She did not make the bland chicken and rice Julian had requested. Instead, she prepared something different. Something that came from instinct rather than instruction. That evening, when Mrs. Patterson carried the tray to Julian's study, he looked up with disinterest. Then he smelled it. Rich, savory, with hints of rosemary and garlic. His stomach, which had been a tight knot for months, suddenly growled. "This is not what I ordered," he called out. Olivia appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "No, it is not. I made braised lamb with roasted vegetables and herb potatoes. If you do not want it, I will take it back to the kitchen, but I think you should try it first." Julian wanted to refuse out of principle, but the aroma was overwhelming, pulling at memories of Sunday dinners and laughter and Catherine teasing him about his appetite. Before he realized what he was doing, he picked up his fork. The first bite was like waking up from a long, dark dream. The flavors were rich and perfectly balanced. The lamb fell apart under his fork. For the first time in over a year, Julian ate because the food tasted good, not just because his body demanded fuel. He finished half the plate before he even realized what he was doing. When he looked up, Olivia was gone, but Mrs. Patterson stood in the doorway with tears in her eyes. "She is different, that one," the housekeeper whispered. "Maybe she's what you need, sir." Julian did not respond. He just returned to his meal, and for a brief moment, the weight on his chest felt slightly lighter. Breaking through the ice over the next few days, Olivia established a routine. She cooked 3 meals a day, whether Julian ate them or not. She never pushed, never asked questions about Catherine, and never treated him with the careful pity that everyone else did. She simply cooked, and slowly. Julian found himself actually looking forward to meals. On the 4th day, he came into the kitchen. It was the first time he had entered that room since Catherine's death. His wife had loved to cook on weekends, and the kitchen had been her domain. Now, Olivia worked there with easy efficiency, her movements graceful and purposeful. "Why do you cook the way you do?" he asked abruptly. Olivia did not startle at his voice. She continued chopping vegetables with steady precision. "What do you mean?" "Your food. It is not just technical. There is something else in it. Something that makes me want to keep eating." She paused, considering his words carefully. "I cook with intention, Mr. Montgomery. Food is not just fuel for the body. It is comfort and memory and hope. When I cook for someone, I try to give them all of that on a plate. That sounds like poetry, not cooking. Maybe good cooking is poetry." Julian found himself almost smiling. It felt strange on his face, like a muscle he had forgotten how to use. "My wife used to say something similar. She said that food was love made visible." It was the first time he had spoken about Catherine without his voice breaking. Olivia met his eyes with gentle understanding. "She sounds like she was wise." "She was everything," Julian said quietly, "and I failed her." The words slipped out before he could stop them. He expected Olivia to offer empty comfort or change the subject. Instead, she simply nodded. "Tell me about her. Not about how she died, but about how she lived." And somehow, standing in that kitchen with this woman he barely knew, Julian began to talk. He told Olivia about how Catherine loved thunderstorms and terrible puns, how she could never remember where she put her reading glasses, how she had chosen every plant in the garden and named them all ridiculous names. For the first time since the accident, Julian remembered his wife as she had been alive and vibrant and real, not just as the woman he had lost. When he finally left the kitchen an hour later, something had shifted. The crushing weight of grief was still there, but now there was something else too. A tiny spark of something that felt dangerously close to hope. Olivia watched him go, her heart aching for this broken man who was just beginning to remember how to feel again. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing with certainty. Julian Montgomery needed more than just a chef. He needed someone brave enough to walk beside him out of the darkness. And whether she had planned it or not, Olivia Carter was exactly that person. 6 weeks had passed since Olivia first walked into the Montgomery estate. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. Julian ate regular meals now. He had started taking morning walks through the grounds. even hiring gardeners to begin restoring Catherine's beloved rose garden. The shutters stayed open, letting sunlight flood through rooms that had been dark for too long. Mrs. Patterson watched the changes with quiet joy. The master of the house was far from healed, but he was living again, and that was something no one had thought possible. It was Olivia who suggested the gala. It's a spring charity event, she mentioned one evening while serving dinner. Mrs. Patterson says you used to host it every year. Julian's fork paused halfway to his mouth. His expression darkened immediately. That was before. Catherine organized those events. I have no interest in pretending everything is normal. I am not suggesting you pretend anything, Olivia said carefully. But you have business partners who need to see you. People who have been patient but are starting to worry about their investments. And maybe it would be good for you to face the world again. Since when did my chef become my life coach? Julian asked, but there was no real anger in his voice. Since your chef realized you were ready for this, even if you do not believe it yourself. Julian studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. He found only honest concern and that steady confidence that had drawn him to her from the beginning. If I do this, he said slowly, I would need help. I cannot organize something like this alone. You would not be alone. Mrs. Patterson knows all the vendors. I can handle the catering. You just need to show up and remember how to be Julian Montgomery, the man who built an empire, not just the man who lost his wife. Words should have hurt, but somehow they did not. Olivia had a way of speaking truth without cruelty, of pushing him forward without making him feel weak for having fallen in the first place. All right, he agreed. One event. But I am warning you now. I will probably be terrible at it. Olivia smiled. And Julian felt his chest tighten with an emotion he could not quite name. I have faith in you. Mr. Montgomery, Julian, he corrected quietly. When we are alone, you can call me Julian. The use of his first name felt intimate, like crossing an invisible line they had both been carefully avoiding. Olivia's cheeks flushed slightly, but she nodded. Julian, then, preparations and realizations the next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The estate came alive with workers cleaning, decorating, and preparing for the first major event it had hosted in over a year. Julian threw himself into the preparations with an energy that surprised everyone, including himself. He found himself seeking out Olivia's opinion on everything from the guest list to the music selection. She had a natural elegance and understanding of what would work. Despite coming from a completely different world than his wealthy associates, you should attend as a guest, Julian said one afternoon. Finding her in the kitchen testing appetizer recipes, Olivia looked up, flour dusting her cheek. I am the chef, Julian. I will be working that night. I am hiring additional catering staff. You have worked hard on this event. You deserve to enjoy it. He hesitated, then added more quietly, and I would like you there. Not as an employee, but as someone I trust. The weight of his words hung between them. They both knew this was more than just an invitation to a party. This was Julian acknowledging that Olivia had become important to him, that their relationship had evolved beyond employer and employee into something more complex and fragile. I do not have anything appropriate to wear to an event like this, Olivia admitted. That is easily solved. Consider it part of your compensation for all the extra work you have done. Before she could protest, Julian pulled out his phone and made a call. By the next afternoon, a personal stylist arrived at the estate with a collection of elegant gowns. When Olivia emerged, wearing a deep emerald dress that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes, Julian found himself speechless. She looked beautiful, but more than that, she looked like she belonged, like she had always been meant to stand in these halls, to be part of his world. Will this work? Olivia asked, self-conscious under his stare. It is perfect, Julian managed. You are perfect. The words slipped out before he could stop them. An awkward silence followed. Both of them acutely aware they were treading into dangerous territory. The night everything changed. Night of the gala arrived with perfect spring weather. The estate glowed with thousands of tiny lights strung through the gardens. The fountain, newly repaired, sent cascades of water into the air. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elaborate floral arrangements. Julian stood at the entrance, greeting guests with practiced charm. He had forgotten how good he was at this, how easily the role of successful businessman fit him when he allowed it to. But his eyes kept drifting through the crowd, searching for one particular person. When Olivia descended the main staircase, conversations quieted. She moved with natural grace, her emerald dress flowing around her like water. Julian excused himself from the group of investors he had been speaking with and met her at the bottom of the stairs. "You look stunning," he said softly, offering his arm. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied with a smile that made his heart skip. He guided her through the crowd, introducing her simply as a dear friend who made this evening possible. People accepted the explanation without question. Though Julian caught speculative looks from some of the sharper observers, the evening progressed smoothly. Business associates expressed relief at seeing Julian engaged with life again. Old friends offered careful condolences mixed with genuine happiness at his apparent recovery. Through it all, Julian found his attention returning again and again to Olivia. She fit into his world effortlessly, conversing with ease whether she was speaking to a tech billionaire or a charity organizer. She did not try to be someone she was not, and people responded to her authenticity with warmth. Julian was talking with a group of board members when he saw Dominic Pierce approach Olivia, the dance and the jealousy demonic. Pierce was everything Julian was not. Where Julian had become somber and withdrawn, Dominic was charismatic and outgoing. He had been Julian's business partner years ago, before a disagreement over ethics had ended their professional relationship. They had remained cordial, but distant. Orbiting the same social circles without truly connecting, Dominic had also been one of Catherine's closest friends before she married Julian. That old connection had always created an uncomfortable tension between the two men. Now, Julian watched as Dominic smiled at Olivia. With that practiced charm that had won over countless business deals and even more women. Olivia laughed at something Dominic said, and Julian felt something dark and unfamiliar twist in his chest. When the orchestra began playing a waltz, Dominic extended his hand to Olivia.
"Would you honor me with a dance?"
he asked, his voice carrying across the room. Julian saw Olivia hesitate, her eyes finding his across the distance. He should have walked over, should have claimed that dance for himself, but he stood frozen, trapped between wanting her to enjoy herself and wanting to pull her away from Dominic's attention. Olivia accepted Dominic's hand. They moved on to the dance floor together, and Julian felt rage building inside him. Not the cold, numb anger he had lived with since Catherine's death, but something hot and possessive and utterly irrational. He watched Dominic's hand rest on Olivia's waist, watched them move in perfect synchronization, watched other guests smile approvingly at what looked like a perfect couple, and he could not breathe. "Julian, are you all right?" Mrs. Patterson appeared at his elbow, concern etched on her face. "I need air," he managed, turning abruptly and striding toward the terrace. Outside, the cool night air did nothing to calm the storm inside him. His hands gripped the stone railing so hard his knuckles turned white. What was wrong with him? Olivia was free to dance with whomever she wanted. She was not his. She could never be his, could she? "You look like you are about to shatter that railing." Julian turned to find Dominic standing in the doorway, a knowing smile on his face. "What do you want, Dominic?" "To talk about the lovely Olivia Carter. Your chef, I understand? Though she seems to be much more than that to you." "My relationship with Olivia is none of your concern." "But I think it is," Dominic said, stepping closer. "You see, I remember another woman you cared about deeply. I remember how that ended." Julian's entire body went rigid. "Do not bring Catherine into this." "Why not?" "Her death is still the elephant in every room you enter. Everyone knows about the argument you had before her accident. Everyone knows you blame yourself." Dominic's voice dropped lower, almost intimate. "But do they know the whole truth, Julian? Do they know what you really said to her that night?" "Get out," Julian said through clenched teeth. "I am just trying to protect Olivia from making the same mistake Catherine did. Loving you is dangerous, old friend. The people who get close to you end up hurt." Before Julian could respond, Olivia's voice cut through the tension. "Julian, is everything all right?" She stood in the doorway, her face concerned. Dominic smiled smoothly and gave a slight bow, just catching up with an old friend. "Thank you for the dance, Miss Carter. It was truly enchanting." He left, and Olivia moved to Julian's side.
What did he say to you?
"Nothing that matters." But Julian's voice shook with suppressed emotion. "Julian, look at me." He did, and the compassion in her eyes nearly broke him. "I saw your face when I danced with him. I saw the pain there. Talk to me. Tell me what is really happening." And suddenly, all the walls Julian had so carefully maintained came crashing down. "The confession, I was jealous," he admitted, the words torn from somewhere deep inside. "Watching you with him, seeing you laugh and smile, I wanted to be the one dancing with you. I wanted to be the one making you happy. And that terrifies me, because I have no right to feel that way."
Why do you have no right?
Olivia asked softly. "Because Catherine has only been gone for a year. Because I killed her with my words and my pride. Because everyone who loves me ends up hurt, and I cannot do that to you." "What happened with Catherine, Julian? Tell me the whole truth." He looked at her. This woman who had walked into his life and somehow made him want to live again, and the words poured out. "We had a fight the night she died. A terrible, vicious fight about Dominic. Actually, there were rumors that Catherine and Dominic were having an affair. They were not true, I know that now, but at the time I was so angry, so irrationally jealous. I said horrible things to her. I told her if she wanted Dominic so badly, she should just leave. I told her I could not trust her anymore." Julian's voice broke. "She left the house crying. It was raining, and she was upset, and she should never have been driving in that condition. The police said she was going too fast when she hit the curve. The car went off the road and into the ravine. She died instantly." Tears streamed down his face now, the first he had allowed himself to cry in front of anyone since the funeral. "I killed her with my jealousy and my pride. And now here I am, feeling jealous again. Wanting someone I cannot have, repeating the same patterns that destroyed everything before." Olivia took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me very carefully, Julian Montgomery. You did not kill Catherine. A terrible accident killed her. You said things in anger, yes, but that does not make you responsible for what happened. Every couple fights. Every person says things they regret. That does not make them murderers. You do not understand." "I do understand. I understand grief and guilt and the way they twist together until you cannot separate them. But I also understand something else. You are allowed to live, Julian. You are allowed to feel happiness and hope, and yes, even jealousy. Catherine would not want you to spend the rest of your life punishing yourself. How can you be so sure? Because anyone who loved you the way you describe would want you to be happy, even if that happiness comes with someone else. Love does not demand eternal suffering as proof of its depth." Julian pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. She did not pull away. She held him just as tightly, offering the comfort and understanding he had been denying himself for so long. "I care about you, Olivia," he whispered into her hair. "So much that it scares me." "I care about you too," she admitted. "But we need to take this slowly. You need to heal properly, not just replace one attachment with another. I know. You are right, but being near you and not being with you is torture. Then we will figure it out together, one day at a time." They stood there on the terrace, holding each other while the sounds of the party continued inside. Neither of them noticed Dominic watching from a window, his expression unreadable in the shadows. Julian woke the next morning with a strange sense of lightness. The gala had been a success by all accounts, but more importantly, something fundamental had shifted in his relationship with Olivia. He had spoken the truth aloud, had admitted his feelings and his fears, and she had not run away. He found her in the kitchen, as usual, preparing breakfast. But today was different. Today, when their eyes met, there was an acknowledgement of everything that had passed between them the night before. "Good morning," she said with a soft smile. "Good morning." Julian moved closer, drawn to her like gravity. "About last night. We agreed to take things slowly," Olivia reminded him gently. That means no rushing into declarations or decisions we might regret. I will not regret this, Julian said with certainty. Whatever this becomes between us, I know I will never regret it. Before she could respond, Mrs. Patterson burst into the kitchen, her face flushed with agitation. There is someone here to see you, Mr. Pierce. He says it is urgent. Oh. Julian felt his jaw tighten. Dominic was the last person he wanted to see this morning. Tell him I am not available. He says it is about Catherine, Mrs. Patterson added quietly. He says there is something you need to know about the night she died. The words hung in the air like a threat. Julian felt Olivia's hand touch his arm, grounding him. You should hear what he has to say, she said. Whatever it is, facing it is better than wondering. Dominic's revelation. Julian found Dominic in the study, examining the family photos on the mantel with an expression Julian could not quite read. This better be important, Julian said coldly. You have no right to use Catherine's memory as a way to gain entry to my home. Dominic turned, and for the first time since Julian had known him, he looked genuinely uncomfortable. Should have told you this a year ago. I should have told you before Catherine died. But I was a coward, and my silence has let you torture yourself for something that was not your fault. What are you talking about? Dominic took a deep breath. The night Catherine died, she did not leave your house because of your argument. She left because I called her and told her I needed to see her urgently. I told her I had evidence about a business deal that would ruin you if she did not help me stop it. Julian felt the blood drain from his face. What? It was a lie. There was no business deal, no evidence. I was trying to create a rift between you two because I wanted her for myself. I had always loved Catherine, even before she met you. When I heard you two had fought, I thought I could use it to my advantage. I manipulated her into leaving the house that night. The room spun. Julian gripped the edge of his desk to keep from falling. You were telling me that Catherine died rushing to meet you? That if you had not called her, she would still be alive? Yes, Dominic's voice broke. I have lived with that guilt every day since. When I saw you last night, so jealous over Olivia, so convinced you were responsible for Catherine's death, I realized I had to tell you the truth. You have suffered enough for my sins. Julian did not remember moving, but suddenly his hands were wrapped around Dominic's collar, slamming him against the wall. She is dead because of you. My wife is dead because you wanted something that was never yours? Julian, stop! Olivia's voice cut through his rage. She stood in the doorway, her face pale, but her voice steady. Hurting him will not bring Catherine back. You need to let him go. Julian's hands shook with the effort of controlling himself, but he released Dominic, who slumped against the wall. Looking broken, get out of my house, Julian said, his voice deadly quiet. And if I ever see you again, I will not be responsible for what I do. Dominic nodded, straightening his clothes. I deserved worse. I just wanted you to know the truth. Catherine's death was not your fault. It was mine. He left, and Julian stood trembling in the middle of his study. The world he thought he understood completely shattered. Processing the truth, Olivia did not speak. She simply moved to Julian's side and held his hand. They stood like that for a long time, processing the magnitude of what had just been revealed. All this time, Julian finally whispered, I thought I killed her with my words. I thought my jealousy and my anger sent her out into that storm. You did not know, Olivia said gently. But it changes everything. All the guilt I had been carrying, all the self-punishment, it was based on a lie. Dominic manipulated her. He used our fight to get her out of the house. He is responsible. Yes and no, Olivia said carefully. Dominic made a terrible choice that had tragic consequences. But Catherine still chose to drive in that storm. The weather still caused the accident. Blame is complicated, Julian. There is rarely one simple answer. Julian pulled away, pacing the room like a caged animal. How am I supposed to feel? For a year, I have been destroying myself with guilt, and now I find out it was someone else's manipulation that killed her. Should I feel relieved? Angry? I do not know what to feel. You feel whatever you need to feel, Olivia said. Grief is complicated enough without adding layers of guilt and blame. Maybe the question is not whose fault it was. but how you move forward now that you know the truth. Julian looked at her. This woman who had somehow become his anchor in a storm he had not even known he was in. I do not know how to move forward. I have spent so long punishing myself that I do not know who I am without that guilt. Then we figure it out together, Olivia said, echoing her words from the night before. One day at a time. Over the next few weeks, Julian began the difficult work of truly healing. He spoke with a therapist for the first time since Catherine's death. Working through the complex emotions of grief, guilt, anger, and the tentative hope that had begun to grow in his heart, he threw himself into restoring Catherine's rose garden. But now the work felt different. Before, it had been another form of penance. Now, it was a celebration of the woman his wife had been. A living memorial that would bloom each spring as a reminder of the love they had shared. Olivia was there through it all. Steady and patient, never pushing him, but always available when he needed someone to talk to. Their relationship remained carefully platonic, both of them aware that Julian needed time to heal properly before they could explore what might exist between them. One afternoon, Julian found Olivia sitting among the newly planted roses, a book open on her lap. The sun caught the gold in her hair, and for a moment he just watched her, marveling at how someone so unexpected had become so essential to his life. "May I join you?" he asked. She looked up with a smile and patted the bench beside her. Julian sat, close enough that their shoulders touched, and for a moment they just sat in comfortable silence. "I have been thinking," Julian said finally, "about what moving forward really means. And what conclusions have you reached? That loving Catherine and opening my heart to someone new are not mutually exclusive. That I can honor her memory while still allowing myself to be happy. That she would want me to live, not just exist." Olivia turned to look at him, hope and caution mingling in her expression. "Those are good realizations. I am not completely healed," Julian continued. "I do not know if anyone ever completely heals from losing someone they love. But I am ready to try. I am ready to see what might be possible, if you are willing to take that chance with me. Julian, I care about you deeply. But I need to know this is not just gratitude or convenience. I need to know you are choosing me because you want me, not because I helped you through a difficult time." Julian took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. "Olivia Carter, from the moment you walked into my study and refused to be intimidated by my anger, you fascinated me. You challenged me and comforted me in equal measure. You saw past the grief to the man underneath and believed I was worth saving. I am choosing you because you are extraordinary, because you make me want to be better. Because when I imagine my future, you are in it. Not as my chef or my friend, but as my partner in whatever comes next." Tears glistened in Olivia's eyes. That is a beautiful thing to say. It is the truth. So I'm asking you, will you take a chance on a broken man who is learning to put himself back together? Will you help me build a life that honors the past while embracing the future? Olivia did not answer with words. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I will take that as a yes," Julian asked, his heart lighter than it had been in years. "Yes," Olivia confirmed. "One day at a time, we will figure this out together." Epilogue. 1 year later, the second annual Montgomery Charity Gala was even more successful than the first. The estate glowed with life and laughter. The gardens a riot of color thanks to the careful restoration work Julian had overseen. Julian stood on the terrace, watching guests mingle below, and felt a profound sense of peace. The past would always be part of him. Catherine's memory still lived in his heart. In the roses that bloomed each spring, in the photographs that lined the halls, but he had learned that honoring the past did not mean being trapped in it. Arms wrapped around him from behind, and he smiled, recognizing Olivia's touch instantly. "Happy?" she asked, resting her chin on his shoulder. "Very," he replied, turning to face her properly. The engagement ring on her finger caught the light, a symbol of the future they were building together. They had taken their time, moving slowly and deliberately. making sure their relationship was built on solid ground rather than grief and gratitude. They had faced questions and judgment from some quarters. People who thought Julian was replacing Catherine or moving on too quickly, but they had weathered those challenges together, confident in what they had built. Catherine would have liked you, Julian said. Not for the first time. Olivia smiled. I hope so. From everything you have told me, she sounds like she was remarkable. She was. And so are you. I am incredibly lucky to have loved two extraordinary women in one lifetime. Come on, Olivia said, taking his hand. Your guests are waiting, and I believe you owe me a dance. Julian let her lead him back inside, into the warmth and light and life. He had learned that the heart had an infinite capacity for love, that healing did not mean forgetting, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage was allowing yourself to be happy again. As they moved onto the dance floor, Julian held Olivia close and thought about how far he had come from that bitter, broken man who had tried to send her away on her first day. She had saved him in ways he could never fully express. Not through grand gestures, but through simple persistence, honest compassion, and a refusal to let him give up on himself. The music swelled around them, and Julian Montgomery, who had once thought his life was over, realized he was wrong. His life had not ended with Catherine's death. It had simply been waiting for someone brave enough to show him that it could begin again. And in the arms of Olivia Carter, surrounded by the life they were building together, Julian finally understood what it meant to truly live once more.